This is exactly as good as you think it is. This, in case you hadn't guessed, is the brand new Jaguar F-Type, one of the most exciting cars Jaguar has released for years. And let me explain why. You see, this car has been rumoured for years, decades even. I mean, there's been press speculation about a smaller, sportier Jag. There's been concepts, there's been internet rumours in forums and all that kind of stuff. I mean, this thing is so hotly anticipated. It's supposed to bring new, younger, more exciting buyers to the brand. But now, finally, after all the chat, it's here. And it's really rather special. There are 3 engines available from launch. Now you've got 2 supercharged V6s, the F-Type and the F-Type S, and then you have the V8 S. Now the power in the V6s is 340 horsepower in the standard car and 380 in the S. Now the difference between the two is that in the S you get a lot more sort of electronic trickery, like adaptive damping, which measures your steering input 500 times a second and the position of the wheel 100 times a second. So the car knows exactly where you are and what you're doing, which is pretty smart. You also get things like active exhaust and stuff like that makes everything a bit more exciting. Then in the V8S you get 495 horsepower. Now, to put that into sort of numbers you can picture, the base V6 will do 0 to 60 miles an hour in 5.3 seconds, and it'll do just over 160 miles an hour. The V8S, the one we're in right now, that'll do 0 to 60 in 4.3 seconds, and it'll do 186 miles an hour. And it sounds like thunder, and is a bit addictive. As a thing to look at, the F-Type certainly is something. I mean, it's absolutely exquisite, but everything has purpose. For example, its grille looks like it's just going to eat the road, but it's also there to cool whichever heart lies underneath its very trick bonnet. The F-Type's construction is all aluminium, so the bonnet, even though it looks very pretty, actually a lot more work went into it. You see, aluminium doesn't bend like that, it just doesn't work. So Jaguar's engineers had to come up with a new alloy that they could then press 3 times to get the crease lines that the designers wanted to have. As a result, it only weighs 15 kilos, which in bonnet terms really isn't much. To keep everything nice and slippery, the designers put in some nice little barreling details. For example, the door handles go into the car and they open when you unlock it or press on a pressure pad. That's really cool, but it keeps the silhouette and the line really nice and smooth. The heart lines of the car, which is something the designers are incredibly big on, they start at the front, meet in the middle, then go over to the back and give it a really powerful stance. It's the rear, though, that features my personal favourite part of the car. Because of its lines and because of its shape, it does need a spoiler to stay on the road at speed. So at 60 miles an hour, a little bit of the boot rises up and adds an extra 120 kilos of downforce. As its name suggests, it has a very big pair of shoes to fill, the legendary E-Types. But how does the car's creator feel about that?
Something that we've always wanted to do in the last 10 years, literally wanting to get to the F-Type, or the two-seater sports car. And actually when we started this, we didn't even know it was going to be called the F-Type. That came at the very end, but it was really the spiritual successor in many ways to the last two-seater, which is the E-Type. Yeah, of course we're very aware of that E-Type. It kind of sits here at the back of my shoulder. I can feel it all the time. But if you start off with a set of principles that are right for Jaguar and right for now, the 21st century, then you will come up hopefully with the right answer. You can't be beholden to the past too much. You must be very aware of it. You must respect it. And yes, there are 1 or 2 details in this car which I can pinpoint came exactly off a previous car, such as the E-Type, or even the XJ come to that. But yeah, there's pressure there, of course. But you know, we're a good design team and we can cope. When you design a car, you're very close to it, literally, in so many ways for so long, and you don't really get to understand the character of the car visually until you see it on the road. And I'm just starting to absorb the character of the car now. So really the most important aspect of the car for me was always going to be the overall proportion and architecture of the car. And now I'm seeing it driving around, driving the track here or driving it on the roads outside. I'm starting to really absorb the overall stance of the car. I love that. The car's got great presence, it really has. But in terms of detail, you have to look at the back end of the car. I mean, it's just so sculptural, it's very sensuous. It does have a touch of that Jaguar E-Type about it in terms of its slimness across the back. That's very deliberate. But it is also very important for us to create something which was for now. Yeah, there is an influence here and there, but the end result has to be for now. So the rear three-quarter for me was really the most exciting part of the car. Of course, the back of a Jag is very important because it's the one aspect of the car that most people will see.
The F-Type comes from a long dormant line of small, fast cats. Jaguar's bread and butter was good-looking sports cars. 1948's XK120, for example, was the fastest car on the road at the time. Its successors, XKs 140 and 150, built on its success. In 1951, the C-Type took to the track. The competition-type racer was based on the XK120 and took pretty much everything the racing world had to throw at it. When 1954 rolled around, the D-Type took over racing duties. Now, it did share some components with the C, but it was built on a vastly different monocoque chassis and had some pretty kick-ass advanced aerodynamics, hence the giant wing. Now, because of that, it beasted pretty much everything on the racetrack. It even won Le Mans 3 times on the trot. Now, in 1957, Jaguar's racing department was briefed with creating a road-going successor to the XK150 based on the lessons they'd learned developing that D-Type. In 1961, the E-Type was launched at the Geneva Motor Show to critical acclaim, and the rest, as the cliche goes, is history. But this leads us on to an interesting point. You see, the E-Type regularly tops polls of best-looking cars, and Enzo Ferrari himself once described it as the most beautiful car ever made. So, is the F-Type already a stunning car to look at, a worthy successor? It's not just got to be very good, it's got to be better than that. It's got to be perfect. Jaguar knew that in order to make the F-Type as special as it needed to be, they had to hit the nail firmly on the head. They had to get this right first time. No waiting for a refresh, no sort of waiting to see what happens. This had to be brilliant straight out of the box, and thankfully it is nothing short of that. It is absolutely incredible. The aluminium construction in this thing, because it's so light, and they really want to make you feel sort of low down and ensconced within the car, so it's got a really low centre of gravity and it's nice and light, which helps that steering, helps the balance, helps the cornering. It just helps the entire car feel lithe and nimble. They've given it a near 50-50 weight distribution. Now, in order to do that, it is incredibly tricky, especially in a package like this. They've had to get a little bit clever. For example, the washer bottle for the fluid isn't under the bonnet where it usually is. It's in the rear, just so you can get the perfect balance to make this a perfectly balanced car. Mike Cross, Jaguar's handling guy, even though that's massively underselling him, he's gone on the record as saying that he's particularly proud of the steering, and you know what? He has every right to be. This whole car is so fluid and so beautifully balanced and wonderful to drive. The whole experience, the open top nature of it, the fact the interior is canted all towards the driver, it's very driver focused, but it's beautifully designed, and everything about it, it just makes you feel brilliant. You know you're in a special car. Well, out of the 3 versions, the 2 V6s are designed more for handling, even though they have 340 and 380 horsepower respectively. The V6 and the V6S are designed for sort of more twisty handling stuff and is set up as so. That's absolutely brilliant. I took a V6S on track and it felt incredible. I had such good fun in it. I really did love it. I then got in the V8 and I need this noise in my life. Jaguar is fiercely proud of its gearbox. It's an 8-speed jobby and it is absolutely awesome. And it works seamlessly, really, when you're really on it and really powering through. But this car would be awesome with a manual gearbox. It just would be utterly brilliant. I can't help but thinking, just give me a clutch pedal and I can do it myself. And I think that would make it a little bit more engaging. But even without a manual gearbox, with this one, it's still awesome. I still absolutely adore it. Jaguar has made a truly astonishing car here. Another wonderful thing about it is it can take on pretty much everything. The base V6 can take on the standard 911, whereas the V8 can take on the likes of the Aston Martin V12 Vantage, of which there is now a Roadster. It's brilliant. Well done, Jaguar. It's for people who maybe didn't think Jag was quite for them. Now Jaguar's for you. This is a car that you can have. The XK is for old men with golf clubs. This, the F-Type, is a car for people that want fun. The F-Type is supposed to be the Jaguar. It's the car you're supposed to think of whenever you think of the Jaguar brand. It's got to take the torch from the E-Type and bring it down to a new generation of buyers and enthusiasts. But the big question is, I mean the really big question, is does it have the soul of its forebears? The F-Type really, really does.